William Foster is a man known for towering skyscrapers and billion-dollar deals, not bedtime stories and toy repairs. But everything changes the moment two 8-year-old twins, Ava and Liam, step into his office with a handwritten note. "We fix toys. We want to save Mom. Please." Set in the heart of a bustling city, this is a story about unexpected family, second chances, and the kind of courage only children carry. When William agrees to help, he's pulled into a world he's long forgotten, filled with sidewalk markets, hospital corridors, and a fragile bracelet that shatters his past. Why do these kids feel strangely familiar, and what secret does that bracelet hold? Stick around to uncover a deeply emotional journey about loss, hope, and chosen family. Subscribe for more stories that warm your heart and stir your soul. The rain hadn't let up for hours, blanketing the city in a cold gray hush that matched the mood in William Foster's high-rise office. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed Chicago like a glass cage, but inside the silence was sterile, broken only by the faint hum of distant traffic and the rhythmic click of a grandfather clock that no longer chimed. William sat at his mahogany desk, motionless. His eyes weren't on the spreadsheets glowing on the ultra-wide screen. They were fixed on a piece of paper, a single, wrinkled sheet left by his assistant, who had assumed it was just another proposal. But it wasn't. The handwriting was uneven, carefully printed in blue crayon. "We fix toys. We want to work. We need money to save our mom. Please." Below that, in smaller, shakier letters, two names had been signed in childish loops: Ava and Liam. He reread it again and again, as if the words might rearrange into something less heartbreaking. The note had been slid under the front desk earlier that morning, accompanied by a torn plastic bag filled with hand-sewn cloth toys and a business card of his company clipped to the edge. His security team, out of protocol, had alerted the front desk, but when they checked the lobby cameras, the children had already vanished. Children, selling handmade toys. In this weather? William leaned back slowly, staring into nothing, the weight of that last word, "please," gnawing at him. He had read millions of memos in his life, some of them crafted by the most brilliant minds in finance. None had hit him like this. He didn't know what compelled him to look deeper, but he asked his assistant Sarah to check local news and social media. Half an hour later, she returned, hesitantly holding a tablet. "I think this is them," she said, showing him a post from a local community page. The photo was grainy, but it showed two kids, maybe 8 years old, standing at a busy market in Pilsen. One held a homemade sign with crooked letters, "Toys for Mom's Surgery." In the corner of the photo, taped to a donation box, was the logo of Foster Holdings. His logo. Someone must have left a discarded company flyer at a community fair, and these kids, they had clung to it like it was a promise. That was the moment something shifted. Without a word, William stood, buttoned his jacket, and grabbed his keys. His voice was quiet but firm as he passed Sarah's desk. "Cancel my meetings. All of them." She blinked. "Sir? The board? Tell them it's a family emergency." It wasn't a lie. He didn't know how or why, but those children had pierced something in him that had been dormant for years. As he stepped into the elevator, a memory surfaced. One he had long buried. His late daughter, Ella, had once written a similar note when she was 6, a list of things she wanted for Christmas. One item had stood out: more time with Daddy. He hadn't read it until after the accident. Now, in the middle of a rain-soaked afternoon, two strangers' children had managed to stir the very grief he thought he'd buried for good. He arrived at the market just as vendors were closing up for the day. The smell of damp bread and roasted peanuts lingered in the air. People bustled by, hunched beneath umbrellas, minds focused on getting home. But William scanned every corner, every stall, desperate to spot two small figures in this crowd of strangers. And then he saw them. Near the edge of the plaza, beneath the overhang of a closed cafe, sat a little boy and girl. Their clothes were soaked, and they shared a blanket too thin for the weather. Between them, a clear box held a few coins and a crumpled $5 bill. Liam carefully placed a patched-up plush dog on the table. Ava, shivering but focused, was sewing a button onto a stuffed bear. William hesitated. He had closed international deals in 6 languages. He had debated with billionaires and spoken before heads of state, but in this moment, he had no idea what to say. Before he could gather the words, Ava looked up, and their eyes met. "Are you Mr. Foster?" she asked softly, her voice brave despite the cold. Yes, I think I am." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a second, smaller paper, and handed it to him. It was damp, but the crayon still showed. "You looked kind in the photo. Mom said we should believe in kind people." William's throat tightened. "I'm here now," he whispered. "Tell me everything." William crouched slowly to meet their eye level, his $1,000 shoes already soaked from the puddle beneath the cafe awning. He didn't flinch. Something in Ava's expression, fiercely composed yet heartbreakingly fragile, told him this wasn't the first time she'd had to be brave for someone else. "We saw your face on the poster at the community board," she said, hugging her knees for warmth. "Liam said you looked like someone who helps." William glanced at the box of toys between them. Stitched animals, hand-painted cars, a tiny doll with yarn hair, none of them perfect, but each crafted with aching care. Liam was watching him too, his cheeks flushed from cold, his jaw tight with the effort of not crying. "Are you really Mr. William Foster?" Liam asked, voice trembling with both hope and doubt. "I am," William said gently. "But you can call me William. What's your name?" "I'm Liam. She's Ava. We're twins," he said proudly. "Mom says we've been a team since we were beans in her belly." William smiled, despite the tightness in his chest. "And what made you walk all the way across the city to find me?" Ava unzipped her backpack, careful not to let rain seep inside. She pulled out a folded envelope and passed it to him. "That's for you. We wrote it together." Inside was a letter, printed in block letters on lined paper. "Dear Mr. Foster, we know you're really busy. We don't want money for free, but we want to work. We know how to fix broken toys. We've been selling them. Our mom needs surgery. Her heart is sick. The doctor said it costs too much. We don't have insurance, but we have hope. We can clean and draw and help in your office. Please help us save her. Sincerely, Ava and Liam." William's hands trembled slightly as he folded the paper back up. "You two wrote this?" Ava nodded. "We used all our paper. We only had one envelope left." He couldn't speak for a moment. The city buzzed around them, but his world had narrowed to the 2 soaked, shivering children in front of him, and the quiet desperation wrapped inside their words. "I'll help you," he finally said, his voice quiet but firm. "But not as employees, not tonight. Tonight you're coming with me, somewhere warm." Liam glanced at Ava. "Is it okay? Mom always said, don't go with strangers." William gave a faint smile, deeply moved by the care layered in that small warning. "You're absolutely right to be careful. Smart of your mom. Here." He pulled out his business card, the same one they must have seen on the poster. "You can hold on to this, and we'll call someone to let your mom know where you are. Is she in the hospital?" Ava nodded slowly. "Jackson Memorial, room 318. Her name is Emily." Emily. The name echoed inside him like a name from a dream. He didn't recognize it, but it felt like he should. "My car's just down the block," he said. "It's warm, and it's safe. We'll call the hospital from there. Sound okay?" The twins hesitated just a beat longer, then finally rose together, still holding hands as if to reassure each other. Ava scooped up the toy bag. Liam grabbed their tin box of coins. William held the umbrella low as they walked together toward the waiting town car. Inside the sleek, heated interior, the children visibly relaxed. Liam leaned back with a soft sigh, eyes heavy from fatigue, while Ava's fingers fidgeted in her lap. William handed them each a bottle of water from the center console and then dialed the hospital. "Jackson Memorial, this is the main line. How may I direct your call?" "Room 318, patient Emily. Her children are with me. Please notify the nurses station they're safe." A pause, then, "Thank you, sir. I'll let the charge nurse know." William hung up and turned to the twins. "They'll tell your mom right away." Ava gave a small nod of gratitude, but her gaze remained fixed on the raindrops sliding down the window. "She'll be worried," she murmured. Liam spoke up. "We didn't want to leave her, but we thought if we didn't do something, maybe she wouldn't." His voice cracked, and Ava reached for his hand again. William's heart wrenched at the sight. 2 children, carrying a weight far too heavy for their age. "You did the right thing," William said, emotion pressing into his throat. "You're the bravest kids I've ever met." Liam sniffed. "Are you really going to help her?" William didn't hesitate. "I promise, whatever it takes." The car turned toward the north end of the city. As they crossed the river, William caught a glimpse of their reflection in the window, his sharply dressed frame, and between him, 2 small figures bundled in mismatched coats. For the first time in years, the image didn't feel lonely. It felt like the beginning of something unexpected. The car glided silently into the private underground parking of a Mercy Heart Institute, where William had insisted on transferring Emily after one glance at the rundown Jackson Memorial. The twins hadn't argued. They hadn't said much at all during the ride. Ava had quietly explained that they'd packed all their toys and coins just in case, and that Liam had triple-checked their spelling on the letter. William hadn't known what to say to that, only that his own silence had been filled with awe. The elevator ride up was quiet too, except for the soft hum of hospital lights and the occasional ding of floor changes. Ava clutched her doll tightly. Liam's small fingers twitched nervously at the hem of his jacket. William stood between them like a bridge between 2 worlds, his world of wealth and glass towers and theirs, full of quiet desperation and fierce, tiny hopes. Room 312. They stopped. A nurse greeted them with a warm, practiced smile. "You're the gentleman who called? Emily's been stabilized. She's resting, but I can let you in one at a time." "I'll wait," Ava said, her voice steadier than it should have been. "Let Liam go first." William placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'll wait with you." Inside, Emily lay in the hospital bed, thin and pale beneath a web of wires and monitors. Her breathing was shallow, but peaceful. Liam walked slowly to the side of the bed, his shoes scuffing against the polished floor. He reached for her hand and whispered something only she could hear. William watched from the doorway, something inside him twisting sharply. He wasn't sure what he'd expected, but seeing her like this, she wasn't just some woman he was helping anymore. She was their entire world. After a few minutes, Liam stepped out, blinking hard. "She's sleeping, but I think she heard me," he said. Ava nodded and went in next, her steps deliberate. She placed the doll beside her mother's pillow, kissed her cheek, and whispered the same prayer she'd whispered every night since the diagnosis. When she returned, William cleared his throat. "Would you mind if I spoke with the doctor?" The twins exchanged a glance and nodded. The cardiologist arrived shortly after. A small man with wire-rimmed glasses and an aura of quiet authority, he introduced himself as Dr. Ellison. "She's fortunate her children acted when they did," he said, scanning the chart. "Emily has severe mitral valve failure, the kind that requires immediate surgical intervention, within weeks at most." William's voice was firm. "What's the best course of action?" "Surgery. It's expensive and risky without post-op care, but very possible. She's young, otherwise healthy. With the right support, she has a strong chance." "I'll cover everything," William said, not even blinking. The doctor hesitated. And your relation to the patient? The question landed like a sharp gust of wind. William paused, looking through the glass at Ava and Liam sitting close together in the waiting room, drawing something on a napkin with a crayon one of the nurses had given them. I'm someone who should have been there sooner, he finished quietly. Dr. Ellison nodded slowly. I'll have the paperwork drawn up. Thank you. As the doctor left, William turned back to the children. He sat beside them, their crayon sketch visible on the napkin, 3 stick figures holding hands under a sky of bright red hearts. Ava smiled shyly. That one's you. William blinked. Me? She nodded. You helped. That makes you part of our story now. Liam added, Mom used to say every hero starts by doing one kind thing. We think this counts. William couldn't find words, just looked at the drawing like it was more valuable than anything in his penthouse vault. Can we stay with her tonight? Ava asked softly. William nodded. I'll have a cot brought in. You'll stay right next to her. That night, as the hospital quieted, William stood in the hallway outside room 312. Through the glass, he saw Ava curled up against the bed, Liam resting on a cot with the doll between them. Emily slept peacefully, color returning to her face. William leaned against the wall and let the weight of it all sink in. The letter, the twins, the tiny handmade toys, the bravery it took for them to come find him. He pulled out his phone, hesitating for just a second before dialing. James, he said when his assistant picked up. Cancel tomorrow. Clear my schedule for the week. A pause. Everything, sir. Everything. When he hung up, William stared at the sterile ceiling and whispered to no one in particular, I don't know why they found me, but I'm not letting them go. He didn't know it yet, but in that quiet hospital hallway, his life had just been rewritten. The pale morning light streamed softly through the window blinds of a room 312. For the first time in weeks, the monitors beeped steadily, not with alarm, but with calm. William sat in a worn vinyl chair beside the bed, the twins still asleep on their cot nearby. His jacket hung loosely over Ava's shoulders like a blanket. Liam had curled up under it sometime during the night. Their gentle breathing filled the room like a fragile hymn. Emily stirred. At first it was a flicker of fingers, then her eyelids fluttered open like the slow rise of curtains before a long-awaited show. William leaned forward, breath catching. Emily, he said, voice quiet, almost reverent. She blinked, struggling to focus. Then her gaze moved slightly to the side, to the sleeping forms of Ava and Liam. A tear slipped down her cheek. They made it, she whispered hoarsely. They did, William replied, voice thick. They came looking for help, for you. She tried to sit up but winced, clutching her side. Take it easy, he urged, reaching for the nurse call button. You've just had a transfer. The cardiologist says you're stable, but you need rest. Emily's eyes lingered on him for a long moment. Why are you here? William didn't look away. Because I couldn't walk away, not after what they showed me, not after what they told me. There was a pause, the kind heavy with everything unsaid. I didn't even think you'd remember me, she said quietly. I do, he answered simply, and even if I didn't, they would have reminded me. Ava looks just like you when she frowns. And Liam, he tilts his head just like I do when he's concentrating. Emily gave a faint, tearful chuckle. He gets that from you then, and Ava gets her stubbornness from both of us. The nurse entered just then, checking vitals and adjusting Emily's IV. William moved aside, giving her space, but his eyes never left Emily's. After the nurse left, Emily spoke again. Why are you really here, William? The question hung in the air like a challenge. He sat back down beside her, sighing. Because I've spent years pretending I was fine, that I didn't need people, that business deals and penthouses were enough, But then 2 little kids walked into my office with a letter and a paper bag full of broken toys and told me they were trying to save their mom. He looked at her now, unflinching. They reminded me what love looks like when it's real, raw, unpolished, brave. Emily's lips trembled. And now, he said firmly, I want to help, and not just with doctors or money. I want to be there, if you'll let me. Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't strained. It was filled with possibility. Just then, Liam stirred, stretching like a kitten and blinking up at the room. When he saw Emily awake, his eyes lit up. "Mom!" he gasped, scrambling over. Ava followed, blinking sleep from her lashes and smiling wide. "Mommy!" she cried, gently hugging her from the side. Emily's arms, still weak, wrapped around both of them. "I missed you so much," she murmured. William turned away briefly, pretending to check something on his phone. Then Ava looked up. "Did you tell her?" "Tell her what, sweetheart?" Emily asked, stroking her daughter's hair. "That we picked him," Ava said, pointing to William. Emily gave her a questioning look. "We picked him," Liam echoed. "We decided. He's part of our team now." William blinked. "Your team?" Ava grinned. "Yeah, Team Emily." Emily laughed softly, though tears welled in her eyes again. "Is that right?" Liam nodded solemnly. "And Team Emily doesn't let anybody fight alone." William swallowed hard. "Then I guess I better keep up." Later that afternoon, the 3 of them sat on the floor of the hospital room. William in slacks and rolled-up sleeves, Ava teaching him how to mend a doll's dress, and Liam trying to fix a wind-up frog that no longer hopped. It was a strange, beautiful scene, out of place in a sterile medical setting. But it was real. When the social worker came by for the first check-in, she blinked at the sight. "They're comfortable with him," she noted in her report. "Yeah," Emily said, her voice still raspy but stronger. "They are." As evening settled in and nurses made their rounds, William lingered by the door, preparing to leave for the night. "I'll be back tomorrow," he promised Emily. She looked at him, weariness softening her features. "William." He turned. "Why now?" she asked. He looked over at the twins, now drawing together at the small hospital table, lost in their own world. "Because something broke in me when I saw their letter," he said quietly, "and something healed when I saw them smile." She nodded slowly. "Then, come back tomorrow." "I will," he whispered, and this time he meant it with every part of his being. The next morning, the hospital room looked different. Sunlight filtered in through the blinds in golden streaks, warming the chipped linoleum floor and casting soft patterns over the bed where Emily slept more peacefully than the night before. Her breathing was calm, the harsh rasp of pain now softened by medical care and something deeper, hope. William arrived early, a cup of warm chamomile tea in one hand, a paper bag from the hospital cafe in the other. He had no idea what Emily liked for breakfast, so he brought options. "Hey," he said gently as Ava opened the door for him. Her eyes lit up with recognition. "You came back." "I said I would, didn't I?" he replied, crouching to her level. "Team Emily doesn't break promises." She grinned and led him inside, where Liam sat cross-legged on the floor beside his mom's bed, carefully folding strips of hospital napkins. William watched for a moment before asking, "What are you making?" "Flowers," Liam said seriously, "for when Mom wakes up." "They're her favorite," Ava chimed in. "Real ones make her sneeze." William set the bag down on the tray table and leaned over to look at the misshapen but sincere paper bouquet. "You're quite the artist." Liam shrugged, modestly proud. "Mom says I've got a good heart. That's what matters more than lines." William felt that line carve into him like a lesson he hadn't realized he needed. Emily stirred, and slowly her eyes fluttered open. The room grew still. "Morning," she whispered, voice still raspy but stronger than yesterday. "Mom!" Ava darted to her side. Liam followed, holding up the napkin bouquet. "We made these for you," he said, placing them carefully on her blanket. Emily's lips trembled. "They're beautiful. Thank you." William hung back, not wanting to intrude on the moment, but Emily reached toward the tea he held. "Is that for me?" He smiled, stepping closer. "Chamomile. Thought it might help." She took the cup with a grateful nod, inhaling its warmth. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. "As well as one can when there are wires in your arm and machines watching your heartbeat," she said wryly. The kids giggled. William chuckled too. The day moved slowly, filled with moments that stitched themselves into William's soul. Ava braiding her mother's hair, Liam insisting on reading out loud from a battered picture book, the nurses smiling each time they walked in to see William sitting on the floor like a permanent fixture. In the afternoon, as Emily drifted off for a nap, William helped the twins pack up their drawings. "We have to go?" Ava asked, a little crestfallen. "Just for a while," he assured her. "I thought we could go get something better than vending machine snacks for dinner." Liam looked up, hesitant. "But what about Mom?" "She'll be okay," William said gently. "She needs rest, and we'll bring her something good." Ava clutched his hand on the way out, her small fingers gripping tight, as if afraid this was a goodbye. It wasn't. That evening, they sat in a booth at a cozy diner down the block. William had taken off his blazer, rolled up his sleeves, and tried, unsuccessfully, not to spill ketchup on his tie as he cut Liam's chicken tenders. "Do you always wear ties?" Ava asked, squinting at him curiously. "It's part of the uniform," William said, dabbing at the stain. "You look like a principal," Liam added, mouth full. William laughed. "I feel more like a student lately. You two are teaching me things." "Like how to braid?" Ava offered. He nodded solemnly. That was lesson number 1. After dinner, they stopped at a corner pharmacy. William let the twins pick out snacks for their mother. Ava chose lemon drops. Liam picked cherry lip balm. "She always says hospitals make her lips dry," he explained. At the register, William added something quietly. The clerk bagged it discreetly. Back at the hospital, Emily stirred when the kids bounded into the room with the bag of good stuff. William handed her the last item, a small hand cream, lavender-scented. "For your hands," he said softly. "You use them a lot." She blinked, touched by the simplicity of the gift. "Thank you." The room settled into a soft rhythm after that. Ava coloring, Liam curled up with a book. William sat beside Emily again, his voice quiet. "You have brave kids." "They didn't have a choice," she replied. "Life didn't leave us room for much else." He looked at her. "Why didn't you ever reach out?" She exhaled slowly. "I did, once, years ago. Sent a letter to your office, but I never heard back." His jaw tightened. "I never saw it." "I figured," she said, with a hint of bitterness. "Or maybe you did and didn't want the baggage." William looked at the kids, then back at her. "They're not baggage. They're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I didn't even know they existed." Emily's eyes shimmered. "I never wanted to beg you for help." "You didn't," he replied firmly. "They did." A long silence stretched between them, full of things forgiven and still unspoken. Finally, Emily asked, "Why are you really here, William?" He didn't hesitate. "Because I saw a pair of kids who reminded me what it means to fight for someone. And now, I'm fighting for you, for all 3 of you." She blinked slowly, and this time when she reached for his hand it was deliberate. "Then don't let go," she whispered. "I won't," he promised. And he meant every word. 2 days later, William stood in the hospital hallway, his back to the buzzing vending machine as he stared at the sterile tile beneath his shoes. Inside room 312, Emily slept peacefully, her vitals finally steady, color slowly returning to her face. The twins had just left with Ruth, the social worker from the children's ward, who'd grown fond of Ava and Liam in a short time. He hadn't gone back to his office since the day they walked in. Instead, he made calls from the hospital lobby, handled contracts between cups of lukewarm coffee, and answered emails from the bench by the nurse's station. For the first time in his adult life, he didn't care what his board thought of his absence. Because none of it mattered more than this. Ava's small voice broke the silence as she ran up the hallway, gripping something tightly in her fist. Liam followed close behind. "Mom's awake again," she said, breathless, and she smiled. William smiled back. "That's good news." "She wanted this next to her," Ava added, opening her palm. In her hand lay a faded, woven bracelet, frayed at the edges, the colored thread dulled from years of wear. A small charm in the center read, "For her smile, always." William froze. His heart stuttered, caught somewhere between memory and disbelief. He had that same bracelet once. He gave it to his daughter, Caroline, before the accident. She had clutched it so tightly in the ambulance they had to cut it from her wrist in the ER. He never saw it again. He stared at it, stunned. "Where did you get this?" he asked, barely managing to keep his voice steady. Ava blinked, confused by his tone. "It was in Mom's old sewing box. She said it was a gift from someone special. She gave it to me when I had nightmares. Said it would keep me safe." Liam nodded solemnly. It worked. William looked from the bracelet to the children's faces, then toward the room where Emily lay recovering. He hadn't dared to connect the past to the present. But this little piece of Caroline's world, was too specific, too intimate to be coincidence. He knelt slowly, taking the bracelet gently into his hands, reverently brushing the worn threads. "This was my daughter's," he said quietly. Ava tilted her head. "You had a daughter?" "Her name was Caroline," he said, voice thick. "She passed away when she was just your age." The twins fell silent. A shadow of shared pain passed over their young faces. "I gave her this bracelet," he continued, fingers trembling as he turned it over. "She wore it every day. I thought it was lost forever." Ava stepped forward, her voice small. "Mom said it helped her sleep too, before she gave it to me." William's breath caught. His eyes flicked back to the door. Caroline had met Emily before she died. Somehow, in the last months of her life, Emily had found his daughter, held her pain, maybe even been a quiet presence in her grief. The truth hit him like a wave. Emily had kept a part of Caroline alive for years, protected it, passed it on to the children she raised with strength and grace and no help from him. He rose, slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Let's go put it by her side." Inside the room, Emily opened her eyes as they entered. Her gaze drifted to the bracelet in William's hand. "I was wondering when you'd notice," she murmured, faint but amused. "You knew?" he asked, almost accusingly. She nodded weakly. "She used to visit the hospice where I volunteered, sat with the other kids. Didn't talk much. One day, she handed me that bracelet. Said it made her feel brave." William sat beside her, every defense gone. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it wasn't about you," Emily replied gently. "It was about her. I thought you needed space to grieve without me in it. I didn't want to invade something sacred." He shook his head, voice cracking. "You preserved something sacred. I didn't even know how much I needed it, until now." Emily looked at him for a long moment. "She was kind, so gentle. She reminded me of Ava." "She was my entire world," he whispered. "And when I lost her..." I thought the world ended." Emily nodded, her expression soft. "But then Ava and Liam walked into your life." He looked over at the twins, now curled together in a chair by the window, drawing a picture of their mother with wide crayon strokes. "Yeah," he said hoarsely, and suddenly I remembered how to breathe. A nurse knocked lightly and entered with medication. William rose to give Emily space, but she reached for his hand before he stepped away. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling, "for saving me, and for showing up." He squeezed her hand gently. "I didn't save you, Emily. You and those kids, you're the ones saving me." As the nurse tended to her IV, William walked over to the twins. He watched them color side by side, heads bent close together. On the page was a family: a woman in a hospital bed, 2 kids standing beside her, and a tall man holding a heart in one hand. "What's that?" he asked, pointing. Liam looked up. "That's you. And the heart?" Ava answered simply, "That's what you gave back to Mom." William blinked quickly, nodding. "You're both incredible artists." As night fell, the bracelet sat gently on the edge of Emily's blanket, faded but whole, like the hearts in that room. Something lost had come back home. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the hospital blinds, casting long golden stripes across the floor. William sat in the corner of Emily's room, a quiet observer to a life he was beginning to understand piece by piece. Emily was resting again, her face more peaceful than it had been in days, color slowly returning to her cheeks. Across the room, Ava and Liam had turned the armchair into a fortress of coloring books and snack wrappers. Their voices rose and fell in whispers and giggles, a sound so pure it made William's chest ache. He was still adjusting to the weight of it all. Not just the logistics, doctors, bills, planning a future, but the emotional gravity of what it meant to care again, truly care, to open himself to the terrifying beauty of connection. "Mr. William?" Liam asked, padding across the floor with bare feet and sleepy eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," William replied, setting aside his laptop. He motioned for Liam to climb onto the foot of the bed beside him. Liam looked down, then back up at him with a seriousness no child should have to carry. "You'll still help us even when Mom's better, right?" William's breath caught in his throat. "Why would you think I wouldn't?" Liam shrugged, his small shoulders lifting tightly. "Because some people only stay when you need them. Then they leave when things look okay again." William gently touched the boy's back. "That's not the kind of man I want to be, Liam." "But what if you get tired of us?" "I won't." "But what if someone says you shouldn't help anymore?" Liam's voice cracked. "What if they say we're not your real family?" That word, real, cut like glass. William lowered himself to Liam's level, meeting the boy's worried eyes. "Family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing. And I choose you and your sister. I choose your mom. I'm not going anywhere." Liam blinked like he didn't dare believe it. "Promise?" William held out his pinky. "Pinky, promise." Liam linked his small finger with William's, holding tight. Later that day, with Emily still resting, William took the twins to the hospital garden. A small playground sat beneath a flowering magnolia tree, barely maintained but full of promise. Ava raced ahead, her pigtails bouncing while Liam lingered behind. They sat on a bench, watching Ava pretend she was the captain of a spaceship. "She's braver than me," Liam whispered. William shook his head gently. "She's just loud about it. You're brave in different ways." Liam tilted his head. "How?" "You ask hard questions. You love without needing to say it out loud. You protect people by thinking ahead. That's brave, too." The boy looked away, but a small smile crept onto his face. That afternoon, as William reviewed messages on his phone, a text came through from one of his board members. Subject: Urgent. Media inquiry. William, outlets are reaching out about a rumor involving you and a woman at St. Andrews. "We've received 2 calls today. Should we prepare a statement?" He stared at the screen, the air around him thinning. He'd known this moment was coming. The silence would never last forever, but still it shook him. A second message followed. "Also, hearing chatter from stakeholders. Questions about your priorities. They're watching." William's fingers hovered over the screen. He thought of Ava holding her mom's hand through a fever, of Liam watching him sleep in a chair beside Emily's bed just to make sure he stayed. Then he looked over at Emily, her face pale against the pillow but filled with fragile light. Let them watch. That evening, back in her room, Emily stirred. William leaned forward immediately, brushing hair from her forehead. "You okay?" She blinked slowly. "Where are the kids?" "Downstairs. Ruth took them to get hot chocolate." Emily's hand found his. "I heard them talking in their sleep last night. They called you Dad." William smiled, his voice soft. "They can call me whatever they want. I'll still be here." Emily searched his face. "You mean that?" "I do." She closed her eyes briefly, as if absorbing his words like oxygen. "They've never had anyone stay. Not really." "I'm not anyone," William said gently. "I'm the man who lost everything once, and I'm finally ready to build something that matters." Emily turned her head slowly. "Then stay. Not just for them. Stay for yourself." That night, William didn't go back to the hotel. He stayed in the room beside Emily, holding her hand through the quiet hours, listening to the soft rhythm of the heart monitor beside her bed. And when the twins tiptoed in at dawn, blanket dragging behind them, William opened his arms without hesitation, and they all fit, perfectly, into the space that had once felt so impossibly empty. The early morning light spilled across the quiet hospital room, painting soft gold on the sterile walls. William sat beside Emily's bed, one hand resting on the blanket that covered her legs, the other gently flipping through a children's storybook as Liam leaned sleepily against his side. Ava sat cross-legged on the floor, her backpack beside her. With great care, she pulled something from the side pocket, a small, worn jewelry pouch. She opened it and withdrew a delicate bracelet, a strand of simple silver beads, faded from time, with one small charm in the shape of a dove. "I want her to have it," Ava whispered, moving to her mother's bedside, "so she knows we were always with her." William looked up from the book and stared at the bracelet in Ava's hand. His heart clenched. He knew that bracelet, the charm, the pattern of the beads. It was the same design his late daughter Grace had worn, a one-of-a-kind piece made by a local artisan for a charity event 10 years ago, the last gift he had given her before the accident. He had thought it buried with her, but this one, it couldn't be, and yet it was identical. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ava looked up, her expression innocent. "It belonged to our sister. Before she got sick, Mom said she wore it every day. She passed away before we were born." William's mind reeled. "Sister?" He blinked slowly. The silence stretched between them until Emily stirred slightly in the bed. Ava placed the bracelet gently beside her mother's hand and sat back, clutching her knees to her chest. William turned to Liam. "Did your mom ever talk about Grace?" Liam nodded quietly. "Only a little. Said she was the reason we believed in angels." His throat tightened. He remembered that day too clearly, racing to the hospital, breathless with hope, only to find silence and mourning waiting for him. Grace had been 6, beautiful, sharp-witted, fearless. Her loss had shattered him, and after her death his marriage disintegrated. Everything had. But how had Emily ended up with the bracelet? Unless she had known Grace. Unless Grace had been part of something William never understood. A friend's child? A distant relative? The timeline didn't make sense. Emily would have only been a teenager then. Suddenly, Emily's voice cracked the silence. "She was mine, too." William turned sharply. Emily's eyes were open, bleary with medication but focused. "You knew her?" he asked, stunned. Emily's head rested against the pillow as she nodded weakly. "I worked in the hospital. Pediatric unit. I was just an intern then. Nobody noticed me, but she noticed me." Ava scooted closer, holding her mother's hand now. Mom used to read to her, and they did art together. William's breath caught. "I remember. Grace always talked about the lady with the yellow notebook. She said you told stories better than the books did." Emily smiled faintly. "She gave me the bracelet before her last surgery. Told me to keep it safe. Said I would need it someday." Her eyes filled. "When I met Ava and Liam, I knew. I named Ava after her favorite storybook character, and Liam after the boy she said she wanted to marry someday." Tears spilled down William's face, unrestrained. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Emily looked at him, eyes soft with sorrow. "You left the hospital that day and never looked back. You disappeared into your grief. I didn't think you'd want to be reminded." He had tried to forget, that much was true, thrown himself into building his empire so fiercely he forgot how to breathe, how to feel. Until now, until a child's bracelet pulled him back. "You kept her memory alive," he said hoarsely. "When I buried her in silence, you brought her into the light." "She deserved that," Emily whispered. "They all do." There was a long silence, the kind that settles over a room when truth has finally been spoken. Then Ava whispered, "So, are you our dad now?" William looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the spark of Grace's smile in her eyes, the determination of a woman who had carried too much alone, the innocence of a child still hoping for something permanent. "I don't know what the law says yet," William replied softly, reaching for her hand. "But in my heart, I already am." Liam climbed onto the bed, curling next to Emily. "Then, can we go home together?" "Soon," William said, brushing a hand over Liam's hair. "But for now, let's just be here." In that moment, surrounded by the fragile echoes of the past and the warm breath of a possible future, William realized this was the family he never knew he'd needed. And maybe, just maybe, they had needed him too. The first morning light drifted softly across the private hospital room, illuminating Emily's resting face and the worn bracelet on the nightstand beside her. William stood at the large window, sipping a lukewarm coffee, lost in thought. His reflection in the glass looked different somehow, less composed, more human. Behind him, quiet footsteps padded across the tile floor. "Mr. William." He turned to see Ava, her hair still mussed from sleep, holding a sketchbook close to her chest. Liam trailed behind her, rubbing his eyes, clutching a toy car with chipped paint. "Good morning," William said gently. "You two sleep okay?" Ava nodded. "The nurses let us stay on the little couch. It was squishy but warm." Liam yawned. "I dreamed about Mom. And pancakes." William smiled softly. "I think we can do something about pancakes today." Ava walked closer, hesitant. She held out the sketchbook. "We drew something." William knelt beside her. "May I see?" She opened the book to a page with 4 stick figures, 2 small ones holding hands with a taller woman, and beside them, a man with glasses and a briefcase. There were names written carefully in Ava's looping handwriting. Ava, Liam, Mom, William. He stared at the picture for a long moment. There was a speech bubble from the figure labeled Liam that said, "Can we call you Dad?" William blinked hard. "You two drew this?" Ava nodded solemnly. "We weren't sure if it was okay, but we wanted to try." William reached out, pulling them both into a hug, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't need my permission to call me that. You already are my kids. I just didn't know it until now." Liam buried his face into William's shoulder. "Then we want to stay with you forever." The door creaked as a nurse entered, pausing at the sight. "Sorry to interrupt. Ms. Emily is awake." The kids rushed to her bedside. William followed, heart pounding. Emily's eyes fluttered open, and the moment she saw them, her babies, her miracle children, she smiled weakly. "My loves." Ava sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. "Mom, he said we can call him Dad." Emily's eyes shifted to William. A long silence stretched between them. Then she exhaled shakily. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," William said softly, stepping forward. "Emily, I don't want to just help for now. I want to be here. For them. For you." Tears welled in her eyes. "They need you, but I need to know you'll stay if I'm not here." William reached for her other hand. "I failed once. I won't again." A few hours later, a social worker named Maria arrived to discuss the next steps. She was kind but firm, her clipboard filled with checklists, her questions clinical. "I have to ask, Mr. Foster," she said as they sat in the waiting area, "are you considering legal guardianship?" William didn't hesitate. "Yes. Whatever it takes to keep them safe." Maria tapped her pen. "That's noble, but it's also a long process. You'll need background checks, home visits, legal filings." "I understand," William interrupted gently. "I'll do it all." She nodded, impressed. "You should also prepare for opposition. Any known family?" Emily stirred at that. "My cousin, Sarah. She's been distant, but she might cause trouble." William leaned forward. "If she tries to take them, I'll fight with everything I have." That evening, after a long day of evaluations and consultations, William sat between Ava and Liam on a small sofa in the family waiting room. Emily had fallen asleep again, peaceful for now. Liam looked up suddenly. "Dad?" William turned, startled and deeply moved by the word. "Yes?" Liam grinned. "Can we have pancakes and waffles tomorrow?" William laughed, brushing a hand over his hair. "We'll have both, and strawberries too." Ava leaned against his arm. "And can we visit the park when Mom gets better?" "We'll go every weekend if you want." The lights dimmed slightly as night fell, casting soft shadows across the room. Ava looked up at him, her voice small and honest. "You're really not going to leave, are you?" William held them both a little tighter. "Not now, not ever." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by two children who had walked into his life with nothing but a plea for help and a drawing of hope, William Foster found something he hadn't known he was looking for: a reason to stay. A family his. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the hospital room, casting soft beams over Emily's face. William sat by the window, laptop balanced on his knees, scrolling through the latest medical updates and housing options for families with recovering parents. His mind worked methodically. Budgeting, renovations, dietary needs, therapy scheduling, everything had a column, a contingency plan. Until the knock. A hospital administrator stepped inside with an apologetic glance. "Mr. Foster, there's someone here claiming familial rights. She's demanding a meeting." Before William could respond, a woman swept into the room. Mid-40s, tailored suit, too much perfume. Her name was Sarah Whitmore, Emily's estranged cousin. "Well, well," she said, eyeing the hospital room. "Quite the setup. Private care, fancy doctors. This is what guilt money buys, huh?" William stood slowly, his voice calm but edged. You must be Sarah. And you must be the man who abandoned my cousin a decade ago. Now, suddenly playing Daddy of the Year?" Ava and Liam, sitting quietly on the sofa, stiffened. William moved to block their view, shielding them instinctively. Emily stirred, voice weak. "Sarah, not here." But Sarah didn't back down. "Emily, you're ill. What happens if you don't make it? These children," she pointed toward the twins, "need stability, not photo ops." William stepped forward. "And you think you can provide that? I have a home, a husband, a record without media scandals." Her eyes narrowed. "You, Mr. Foster, are a public figure with a reputation to manage. Let's not pretend this isn't a convenient redemption arc for your brand." Liam clutched Ava's hand tightly. "Why is she yelling?" William knelt beside them, speaking softly. "She's upset, but that doesn't mean she's right." Sarah folded her arms. "I'll be filing for custody. As next of kin, I have every legal right." William's eyes didn't flinch. "Then I'll see you in court." That evening, tension clung to the air like fog. Emily rested uneasily. The twins colored quietly, neither speaking much. William paced the hallway, phone pressed to his ear. "I need the best family attorney in the state," he said to his assistant. "Full custody, long term. And I want background checks on Sarah Whitmore. I want to know everything." Later, as the hospital quieted, William sat beside Emily's bed. Her eyes fluttered open again, pained but aware. "She's serious," Emily whispered. "I know. She's cruel, but clever. If she paints this like a PR stunt—" William shook his head. "Then I'll show them it's not." Her hand reached for his. "You don't owe me this, William." "Yes," he said with quiet intensity. "I do. I owe it to them, to you, to the part of me that disappeared when I lost our daughter." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "They're good kids, but they've lost too much already. I'm not going to let them lose again." She looked at him for a long time. Then she whispered, "If you truly want this, fight for them like they're yours. Because they are." Across the hallway, Ava peeked through the partially open door. She saw her mom's hand in William's, their quiet understanding. She didn't know all the legal words or the history that shaped the argument, but she knew something big was happening, something that could decide where they would live, who they'd call family. That night, the twins slept curled up together on the hospital cot, arms tangled. William watched over them for hours. He wasn't thinking about stock prices or shareholder trust. He was thinking about bedtime stories and scraped knees, about first dances and graduation gowns. He was thinking about everything he'd missed with his daughter, and everything he wouldn't miss with these two. But even as he sat there, promising himself he would never let anyone tear them apart, his phone buzzed. A breaking news alert. CEO William Foster involved in custody dispute over terminal patient's children. The headline stung. It framed him as manipulative, opportunistic, a man using charity for redemption. His fingers tightened around the phone. The battle wasn't just legal now, it was public. And for the first time in a decade, William felt something deeper than business pressure. He felt fear, not for his reputation, but for the little boy and girl sleeping soundly in a hospital room he could no longer protect with just money. He would have to fight with something more powerful. His heart. The courtroom was colder than William expected, not in temperature but in tone. Everything about it felt clinical. Sterile wood paneling, sharp suits, the rustle of papers, like emotion had no place here. Yet he'd never felt more vulnerable. Across from him sat Sarah Whitmore, her face carefully composed, her attorney whispering into her ear. Beside William was his legal counsel, a poised woman named Cassandra Bell, one of the best family lawyers in Illinois. Emily wasn't present. Her condition had worsened after another long night, but her words rang in his ears. Fight for them like they're yours. He would, with everything he had. Judge Hawkins, a seasoned woman with a reputation for compassion tempered by caution, looked over the room. We are here to determine temporary guardianship of Ava and Liam Carter due to their mother's incapacitation and the absence of a named legal guardian. The court will evaluate the well-being and stability of each party seeking custody. Sarah's attorney rose first. Your Honor, my client is a blood relative with stable income, a family home, and no public controversy. Mr. Foster, while generous, is a media figure whose interest arose only recently. We question his motivations and the emotional safety of placing two vulnerable children into such a spotlight. Cassandra stood in response. Mr. Foster has not only provided immediate medical care for Ms. Carter, but has offered consistent, direct emotional support to Ava and Liam since the day they appeared at his office seeking help. The children, by their own words and actions, consider him family. Judge Hawkins leaned forward. We will hear from Mr. Foster directly. William rose slowly. Your Honor, I didn't expect them to walk into my life. I didn't know they existed until they did, but from the moment I saw their eyes, saw their courage, I knew I couldn't walk away. He glanced at the children, sitting quietly on the bench beside Ruth. The hospital social worker, Ava, clutched a small notebook. Liam had drawn something on a napkin. William continued. I lost my daughter years ago, and I closed myself off. I thought success would fill the void. It didn't. But these two, they reminded me what it means to show up, not perfectly, but honestly. His voice caught slightly. Their mother trusted me, and I made a promise, to her and to them, that I wouldn't walk away, that I would be there, not because I have money, but because I finally understand what it means to choose family. The courtroom was silent. Judge Hawkins turned to the twins. Ava, Liam, would either of you like to speak? Ava hesitated, then nodded. She rose from her seat with surprising poise, stepping to the stand. Her notebook was clutched to her chest. My mom said family isn't just about blood. It's about who stays when things get hard. She opened the notebook and held up a drawing. A simple house with 3 stick figures and a heart in the middle. That's me, Liam, and Mr. William. That heart is where Mommy is, even when she's sick. He reads to us. He walks with us to the hospital. He doesn't talk to us like kids. He listens. She looked directly at the judge, eyes wide but steady. I don't know what a real dad is supposed to be like, but I think he's trying to be one, and I think my mom wanted that too. Liam stood beside her, not saying anything at first. Then he held out the napkin he'd drawn on. It was a crude sketch of their old hospital room, and William sitting in the chair. He stayed, Liam said softly, every night. Tears slipped down Sarah's cheek, but her face hardened as she looked away. The judge studied the drawings, then turned to Sarah. Do you wish to speak? Sarah stood, then shook her head. No, Your Honor. Judge Hawkins nodded. This court finds that temporary guardianship be granted to Mr. William Foster with ongoing evaluation. A permanent decision will follow Ms. Carter's prognosis. This decision reflects the children's expressed wishes and Mr. Foster's demonstrated commitment. Gasps echoed softly. William exhaled, trembling as Ava rushed forward, wrapping her arms around his waist. You did it, she whispered, voice full of astonished relief. Liam joined a moment later. Does this mean you're really our person now? William dropped to one knee, pulling them both close. It means I'm not going anywhere. As the courtroom cleared, Ruth approached. You made a promise, she said warmly. Now you're living it, he nodded. I'll earn this, every single day. Outside, the media was waiting. But this time, William didn't care about the headlines. He only cared about the 2 small hands in his, and the quiet certainty that he was finally becoming the man he was meant to be. The house William had chosen wasn't grand or sleek like his penthouse. It wasn't made of glass or perched above the skyline. It was a 2-story, brick colonial with a wide porch and a swing that creaked in the breeze. It had a patchy yard that needed work and a cozy, lived-in feeling that no skyscraper could ever offer. It felt like something he hadn't known he'd been looking for, a home. The moving truck had already come and gone, leaving behind boxes labeled Ava's books, Liam's Legos, and Emily's room. He stood in the kitchen now, sleeves rolled up, trying to decipher how to connect the water line to the new fridge. "Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty," Liam said from the doorway, holding a screwdriver like a seasoned mechanic. William laughed. "You sure?" "Pretty sure," Liam replied with a grin, walking over to help. They worked in companionable silence, fingers smudged with dust and tape residue. Upstairs, Ava was arranging her small library in the corner of her room. William had installed a beanbag and a low shelf near the window where sunlight streamed in. "So, they grow," he'd told her, referring to both the books and the children. Outside, the porch swing creaked gently as Emily sat watching the wind play in the trees. She looked stronger, still thin, still pale, but there was a color to her cheeks now, the color of peace. He joined her with 2 mugs of tea, handing her one with a careful smile. "You didn't have to do all this," she murmured. "I know," he said, settling beside her, "but I wanted to, not because I felt guilty, but because I finally realized what matters." Emily's gaze turned to the swing set in the yard, where Liam had just leapt off mid-swing like a superhero, landing in a triumphant crouch. "They're different since the court hearing," she observed. "Lighter, like they're not waiting to be taken away anymore." "Neither am I," William said quietly. The front door burst open. Ava called out, "Mom, come see what we did." Emily stood, steadying herself with the railing. William offered his arm anyway. She took it without hesitation. Inside, the dining room had been transformed. On the wall above the fireplace, framed with string lights, hung a new picture. A stick figure drawing in bright marker colors. It showed a woman with a heart for a chest, a boy holding a wrench, a girl holding a book, and a man in a tie with wild hair. Below it, in Ava's careful handwriting, read, "Family, the one you choose and fight for." "I helped hang it," Liam said proudly. Emily covered her mouth with a trembling hand. That's beautiful." William felt something swell in his chest, a feeling so unfamiliar it almost hurt. That evening, dinner was chaotic and perfect. William burned the garlic bread again. Ava scolded him playfully, and Liam insisted on dipping everything in ketchup, even green beans. Emily sat at the head of the table, her laughter warmer than any fireplace. Later, the children brought out their old toy box. "You kept this?" William asked as Ava pulled out a worn, plush turtle. "We kept everything," she said simply, "even when it hurt." They found the bracelet again, Emily's gift to her children. William held it in his palm. "I have one just like it," he whispered. "My daughter. She wore the same one." "I know," Emily said softly. "It was hers." William looked up in surprise. "I found it in the hospital years ago," Emily said, "left behind by a little girl. I asked the nurses. They said she never made it." Her voice caught, then steadied. "I kept it because it reminded me of what I wanted my kids to feel. Loved. Remembered." He stared at her, stunned. The connection between them ran deeper than either of them had guessed. That night, after story time and tangled blankets and bedtime kisses, William stepped out to the porch alone. The stars were out, clear and brilliant above the trees. Emily joined him a few moments later. "Thank you," she said, voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. He turned to her. "For what?" "For choosing us, when you didn't have to." William looked back through the window. Ava's bedroom light was still on. He could see her small shadow arranging books again. "I didn't choose you," he said. "You chose me first." A pause, then Emily reached for his hand. The swing creaked once more as they sat together in silence, a family not born from planning or perfection, but from resilience, forgiveness, and love. And as the night deepened and the porch light glowed softly around them, William knew the truth. This was the legacy he wanted to leave, not wealth, not empire, but belonging. A home. At last.